Hello, everyone. I'm Hans Engel from the Directors Guild of Canada. Thank you for joining us for this year's online version of DGC Visionaries. Over the last few years, DGC Visionaries has become a must-attend event at many of our top film festivals, bringing together some of the most interesting filmmakers with films at the festivals. This year, we're taking Visionaries online and sharing it clear across the country, highlighting as many brilliant filmmakers coast to coast as we can. All DGC Visionaries sessions are being recorded and will be posted on the DGC National YouTube channel. I'm thrilled and honored to be here with these guests tonight. We're speaking with award-winning director Sonia Bonspille Boileau about her film Rustic Oracle. It has had an interesting journey through the film festival circuit, which actually began last year, where it played VIFF, the St. John's International Women's Film Festival, and Imaginative and more. It had a planned release early this year, which COVID derailed temporarily, so they decided to keep it running in festivals, where it landed at the Finn Atlantic International Film Festival, which has given us this opportunity tonight. Happily, it's also having its Toronto premiere this Friday. So find it, go see it. It's an amazing film. I cannot think of anyone better to lead this conversation than Jeanne Leblanc. Jeanne studied cinema at the Université du Québec à Montréal. At the end of her curriculum, she obtained a scholarship for an artist residency in Madrid, during which she directed a short film inspired by the well-known Madrilenian neighborhood Lavapiés. Back in Montreal, she decided to fully devote herself to cinematographic creation. It's a tough word, cinematographic creation. In the last few years, she has directed short films that travel the world in many film festivals. Alongside her filmmaking career, she also works as an assistant director and is a lecturer in cinema at the Université du Québec à Montréal. In 2017, she directed her first long feature film, Isla Blanca, a work where she invites the audience to an intimate and poetic drama. The film is a true dive into the beauty and complexity of filial relationships. This new opus falls within the scope of this director's line of work. She addresses topics that she previously treated in Garincha in 2017, 10 Seconds of Carla in 2016, and One Night with You in 2011. These topics being ostracism, the intricacy of intimate relationships, as well as the inherent solitude found in final moments. From the greatness to the cruelty of human connections, those are the themes that enliven Jeanne Leblanc, an artist with a sensitive and understated approach. Jeanne just released her second feature film, titled Les Nôtres, Our Own, which won Best Feature at the Brooklyn Film Festival and is now rolling through US festivals with its US distribution. It's fantastic. I'm thrilled to introduce our featured director tonight. Sonia is a bilingual Mohawk and Quebecois filmmaker who has been working with niche media for the past decade at bringing Indigenous content to the screen for viewers of all cultural backgrounds. She first started making documentaries to explore her bicultural heritage and understand the impacts of colonialism. Some of her documentary credits include Last Call Indian, The Oka Legacy, Wapakoni, and Skindigenous. In 2015, Sonia wrote and directed her first feature film, Le Dep, which made the official selection of several prestigious film festivals around the world. Her second feature film, Rustic Oracle, which we're talking about tonight, was shot in her home community of Kanesatake, has already received prizes on the film festival circuit, and was just released in theaters across Quebec. She's currently in pre-production of her first dramatic series. It's fantastic. Two amazing filmmakers tonight. Before we bring them in, let's have a look at the trailer for Rustic Oracle.
No, that just means he likes you.
What? No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
That's gross.
Trust me, that's what boys do.
So if I pinch him back, he's gonna think I like him back?
No, boys are too stupid to get that.
Where are you going? On the front lawn, Mother. Is that okay with you? Jesus Christ.
I'm waiting up for Heather.
Oh, that's my job, baby.
Mom. Have you seen my sister? No!
9 out of 10 times teenagers just want to piss off their parents. She's probably hiding out at friends and she'll be home tomorrow.
Try to find your sister.
I'll go with you. I want to find her too.
You want to tell me about your dreams?
Ivy, stop! Baby! Heather! Ivy, stop! Heather! Baby, stop! Heather!
Just want to find Heather and bring her home. I just want her here.
Fantastic. Please welcome Sonia Bonspille Boileau and Jeanne Leblanc. There they are. Good to see you both.
Hi.
Hi.
Welcome. Now, before I hand it over to Sonia and Jeanne, I just want to let those tuning in know about the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. It's right in the middle. That is where you can type questions into the little Q&A box. Jeanne will be watching that box for your questions throughout the conversation and hopefully feeding them into the conversation all night long. She may not be able to get to all of them, but she certainly will try. So type them in there as soon as you think of them, and Jeanne will be watching.
I will do my best.
You will do your best. Really looking forward to this conversation about this amazing film and about your work, Sonia. Over to you, and I'll see you at the end.
Thanks, Hans.
Thank you. Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Like I said just before, it is the first time that I see the trailer. I saw your two films, L'Adept and Rustic Oracle, and we will speak about those two films. I know that most of the people didn't see L'Adept yet, but I hope they will. It's a beautiful trailer, and I think it's a good start for my first question. That's amazing. It's just because one of the most interesting, there's so many interesting things in your film, but we just see this young lady called Ivy. For everybody, they will hear the name often. So. And through Ivy's eyes, we are introduced to an amazing universe that we don't know. The Mohawk community that you come from, but also the childhood in Mohawk community in the 90s in Quebec. And it's a really specific period for us. And just to make sure that everybody will just well know in which period, because I think it's not up there, but it's so important. Can you just talk a little bit about this period for everybody?
Yeah, it is set in the 90s, even though we don't necessarily say it in the film. And for me, there's many reasons behind that decision. First and foremost, because I wanted to write as close as possible to my heart. Those were the years that I grew up in Ganassadage and in Oka. So it was easier for me to just go back into my own memories to build Ivy and Heather's world. So there's definitely that. There was also the idea of, well, for those who don't know, the Rustic Oracle is about Rustic Oracle is about a missing teenager. And so the big difference between the 90s and today, obviously, is access to information and social media. And back then, if families needed to get the word out about someone who hasn't come home, they couldn't just post it on Facebook. They couldn't just, call the person on their cell. They physically had to go out and get answers. So even for Ivy, because, you know, even at that age, at 9 years old, my son is 10 years old. He knows what a cell phone is. He knows what Google is. You know, he knows what social
They are
media
at
is.
3 years old. They know how to go.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And back then that wasn't the case. So there's all of that played into that decision of setting it in the 90s. And also the idea that, like, I don't want to give anything away for like the end of the film, but there was for me an importance in bringing it back to present day. In order to do that, obviously, well, I had to be in the past at some point to see what happens in her future.
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to make sure that everybody will follow, we will set up the table just to begin. A quick synopsis of the story, because we saw in the trailer, there's this beautiful, amazing actress that we will talk about after that. But there's a story for this young Ivy.
Yeah, so it's basically the Rustic Oracle is Ivy's story, and it's basically her trying to understand what happened to her big sister Heather, who's basically just mysteriously has vanished from their community. And so she's just trying to understand what's going on, and she ends up following her mom kind of like on a road trip down the only clues that their mom Susan has to help her find Heather. So it's we're talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, but through the eyes of a 8-year-old little girl.
And why? Because it's such a deep, and we know that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there was this huge, I don't know how to say it, huge enquête.
Yeah.
How do you say it? Yeah.
Yeah, a national inquiry. Yep.
Yes. And it's such a deep subject. And why through the eyes of this young Ivy?
Actually, it's the national inquiry was one of the reasons why I wanted to write the film, because, you know, we've been talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, especially in Indigenous communities, for years now. You know, I know people that are still suffering from a lost loved one. I'll get to that later, but there's actually a family in the film in Rustic who lost a loved one, and they wanted to be a part of the film. So that was amazing. But it's only in recent years that it has become a well-known, and I hate using the word well-known, but like a better known social issue. But that's the thing. It's become more of a social issue, like a political issue. Like we're talking about statistics, and we're talking about an inquiry that costs money with people working on it. And I feel like as a society, it's almost as if we lost touch with the fact that we are talking about human beings. We're talking about women who have gone missing or have been murdered or victims of violence, and they have families, they have parents, some of them have siblings. So it was kind of with that in mind that I wanted to basically tell one story, but just like scale it back down to the human side of it, and have people feel for this little girl, and show everyone that she's kind of just like you and me, you know. She's just trying to get by as a kid, and this is how it shakes her world. So it was kind of in response to like the stats and all that, and the fact that I felt that it had become like socially we've become kind of like numb to those stats and those numbers, and I kind of wanted to unnumb us basically.
But can it be also because as a white people, we don't want it to be emotionally involved.
That's so true.
Too much. Can we say that? Because I know it's a little bit, everything it's a little bit touchy, but in this conversation, we are alone, you and I.
Yeah.
So we can say that in a way, because sometimes I've got the impression, and when I saw your films, I was just like, oh my God, this is not something that I cannot detach myself. And I'm not Indigenous. I'm really the white privileged person. But so I am emotionally involved in this film.
Exactly. Well, that's the whole point. It's not like us against them, you against me kind of. It's we are all and it sounds super cheesy, but we're all human. We are all human.
We are.
No.
It's not that cheesy, but we just saw the trailer for the people who just saw the trailer, and it's so beautiful. It's the beauty of, let's say, the childhood that can be break at some point for
Exactly.
everybody.
Yeah,
And
exactly. We've all been a kid, and we've all loved someone in our family. And that's actually going back to like the idea of having it told through the child's eyes. I also didn't want to make a film that was just darkness. Like I didn't want it to be incredibly heavy. I didn't want it because I like it's such a hard subject matter in life that I don't know if people would actually want to sit through a film for 2 hours if there was only darkness, if there was only something negative. So there's something really beautiful about kids, is even in times that are incredibly trying and incredibly hard, they still have the need to laugh and giggle and play, because it's just basically they're living off emotion. It's spontaneous. It's what they're living at that moment, and there's lots of beautiful light in that. So it helped. I think Ivy helps bring light to a dark subject. And
may I ask something a little bit personal? But as a kid, did you grew up in the community too? Yeah.
Well, the thing about Ganesadage, for people who don't know, Oka and Ganesadage are like a checkered board. So I grew up in the village of Oka, but the village of Oka is, there's a few plots of land that belong to the community, and I shouldn't even say belong because it's crown land. It's the whole other subject, but because Ganesadage is not a reserve, it's a territory. So the lines aren't as
square.
It's not like this, not like delimited perimeter. So that's one thing. But that being said, I kind of grew up with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. So 1 foot like more on the Quebecois side of everything. Like I went to French school. My parents wanted me to learn French. But I had, like, obviously, as a member of the community, I obviously always had 1 foot in the community. So I've always felt this weird impostor syndrome, regardless of where I was standing, basically, kind of too Indian to hang with the white kids, but then like too white to hang with the Indian kids. So that's the story of my upbringing. So, Ivy's youth does represent like what I grew up with, but not as deep rooted in like the Mohawk side as I wasn't as much, sadly. I wish I was more. I am more now.
Which I find another thing that I find really interesting, because I don't know that much about Mohawk community, but as like in Le Dep, your other feature film, everybody speaks French on the territory, and everybody speaks English in the community. And there's this little word in one scene. They are in Abitibi, and the policeman said, "I don't speak Indian," which is really interesting. "I don't speak Indian," and he laughed. He make jokes, and Ivy said, like an old woman, she said, "Me neither." Or us either. I don't remember the exact words, which I found really interesting, because in another level, we talk about this childhood, but also this, in French, we will say déracinement.
Mm-hmm.
Can we say that?
Yeah.
Is it something, because in your 2 films, we talked about this memory lost. And is it important for you to talk about it?
Mm-hmm, definitely. Right, just to put things in context, when I did Le Dep, because it's set in a Innu community and not a Mohawk community, that's kind of what made the decision easy to have like the French side. And in Mohawk communities, like no one speaks French. Everyone speaks English. And that comes mainly because, well, anyways, I won't give a history class, but because the Confederacy is also in like the northeast of the United States, but also because it's the Anglican Church that like were the priests that were, you know, that took over the Mohawks, as opposed to Les Oblats, which is what happened to the rest of Quebec. Anyway, yeah, what were we talking about before I did that little?
Do you think there's something in the lust of
Oh,
memory?
memory. Yeah. I just lost mine right there. No, I think it comes from the fact that so when I write, I always try to write closest to me as possible, because I feel like at least I know that I'm speaking the truth. Like I'm speaking my truth, but I feel like at least my characters will feel real to me if I keep them close to who I am. But it's also because I use script writing as a way to like evacuate my own demons. when I find something really heavy emotionally, and not just heavy for me, but like for, you know, society, but also for me personally, writing is my therapy. So everything that I have written so far is directly linked to the way I feel. So I think that's probably why there's like these themes that keep coming, of because I see a lot of myself in Ev's character Lydia and the depth. There's a lot of me in that, and there's a lot of me in Ivy, and there's actually a lot of me in Susan the mom too. So so that's probably why there's some of those themes that come back. Yeah.
Because when you just talk, it brought me to two different topics or questions. So let's start with the first one. The second one will be the filmmaker duty of memory, but it's a deep one. So let's start with this softer, sorry. It's in your two films, and now you give me such a little answer. We've got the impression that this new generation of Indigenous women got not the answer, but might be little part of the solution of violence and of this incomprehension between communities, between white people, Indigenous people. There's something so empowerment for the woman character of both films. It's all woman. We didn't see the men, or at least not that much. And it's the young generation who brought something like some light. And is it something that is it conscious or unconscious from you? Because you said it's a little bit of me, but also is it the way that you see it?
Oh, definitely. It's the driving force of the films that I want to make. I want to see powerful Indigenous women on screen, and it's for many reasons, but the two main ones being, for many years growing up, seeing films and TV shows, and especially American films, but even seeing Indigenous characters on Canadian television and in media and even in literature, there were never strong female characters. They're always like in the back, you know, and if they are part of the actual main storyline, they're very, very stereotypical, and they only answer to like three types of characters, and that's like the easy woman, the what?
The mom.
yeah, the like the temptress, or the woman that needs to be saved by the white guy, or like the elderly wise woman, but she's kind of like almost viewed as almost like a witch, or, you know, whatever. Anyways, and all these characters, what they do have in common is, in all, like, especially American films, they all die, you know. And with my own eyes as a kid, I come from a community where women rule. You know, like in Mohawks, well, first of all, Ganegahaga, like it's a matriarchal society. So right off the bat, like there's a great importance, like women basically rule, you know, but also that's what I saw. Like in 1990, there was the Oka crisis in my community, and I saw women locked arm in arm, defending the land in front of like hundreds of men with guns, you know, like they are, the women are the ones that are going to defend the land, defend the culture, defend the children. So there's something incredibly powerful about that, and that's still going on today. Like if we look at a movement like Idle No More, it was created and led by women. If you look at any like environmental protest, it's mostly led by women. So why not show that in film if it's actually a representation of what's going on in life? And I think that if we can change the way that we view Indigenous women on screen, like I hope that that can actually be one of the factors that help eventually change, like, well, maybe not directly change the statistics about violence against Indigenous women, but at least socially give them a higher importance, so they're no longer viewed as like the most marginalized part of society, which they are at the moment in Canada. So I feel like the more powerful the characters are on screen and the more real, like real with real personalities, I think eventually that could probably help and change the way society as a whole sees Indigenous women, so they can see Indigenous women like I see Indigenous women, like kick-ass ladies that are changing the world.
But will you say that the three main characters, when you think about that, Suzanne will fight, but she's got many issues of her own, and Ivy is this innocent girl who will bring something new and hope. But Heather, I wanted to speak about this character because this is the one that we don't see, but we always talked about. Mm-hmm. Because she's not so, she's beautiful. She's got this sense of humor. She's got this good heart. But why do you think those women, because I feel it hard to understand how she get trapped. But at the end, we talked about 4,000 women who disappears in the last 3 or 4 decades.
Yeah, 4 decades. Yeah,
3 decades. So it's a huge. It's not just 1 or 2. It's 4,000. But Heather, why? She seems so aware, good, intelligent, brilliant, beautiful girl. She's got. And do you get the sense that all those women? Do you think it represent not what really happened, but in your words, what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would have been a bit too easy to present a Heather that was like already riddled with problems and issues, because I think that's not a fair representation of what actually does happen. I think a lot of women that are victims of, Indigenous women that are victims of violence are human trafficking, let's say. I think they a lot of them are probably like Heather. They're kind, most of them, you know, like they don't all have, exactly, too kind in a way. Yeah, but there's also an undertone in Rustic, and I don't want to say too much about it because I'm assuming people haven't seen the film, but of not addressing a darker past as well, and that has created for Heather a feeling of missing something, longing for something, and then there's a person that comes into her life that actually kind of helps fill that void, and pretending that doesn't exist in our communities like it does exist in any other community, you know, in any cultural community anywhere. It would have been like a bit hypocritical to pretend that doesn't exist in our communities as well. So I'm not saying that all missing teens have baggage they haven't dealt with. I think that would be unfair to say that it happens to everyone, but it does happen to some of them. And that, and I actually researched quite a bit on survivors of violence and human trafficking and all that, and a lot of them have that a certain. It's hard to talk about it without revealing too much about the film.
Okay,
but,
so I will stop you because you said something so interesting that will bring me to the other subject that I love,
all right.
the duty of memory. Because what you are talking about, it's this desire to avoid memories, to don't remember, that comes with, I don't speak my language or my ancestors' language. I don't want to talk about this dark past. I don't want to talk about, when you think about that, there's many places in the film. It's maybe at another level where everybody wanted to got this huge desire to just don't remember. But as a filmmaker, do you think we've got the reverse, the duty to remember? Do you think?
Definitely. I think, well, for me, and I think you do the same things in your film as well.
I think it's a huge subject.
Yeah, and I think it's, well, I don't know how you process when you have an idea and you're putting together your story, but I always feel like if this can tell a story that is rooted in someone's reality that has actually happened in our society, and I'm addressing issues that I feel need to be addressed, and if this can actually serve as a wake-up call to anyone, then of course those are going to be driving forces for me to continue writing. I'm not the type of person that's going to pour so much time and energy and effort and emotion into a film, a project, if I don't see the social power of it that comes with it. And there's also the fact that, and especially after Le Dep, but even now after Rustic, there's always this fear of, maybe I'll never get to make another film. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is the only time I'm going to have a voice. And if it's the only time that I have a voice, what do I want to say with that voice? You know, what do I need to get out there? So I think in that sense, it automatically becomes a duty of memory, of you know, recollecting and making sure that people know that this is someone's reality somewhere in this present time, or, you know, like I think it's part of the reason why I want to make films. I've never wanted to make films just for making films. Like, I love the art of filmmaking, but before that, I feel like I'm not an activist, as in, like, I can't organize marches and go out and protest. That's not me. And I'm so thankful that there are people that do that. But my form of activism is storytelling. That's how I see it. So I think in that sense, it becomes, default and more, like we were saying.
Which is so powerful. I think when you wanted to treat about the silence or the way we wanted to forget, and as a filmmaker, when you wanted to treat those specific subjects, you will always get people who still don't want to remember after your film, or still wanted to keep silence, or don't want to believe what you are telling, or will tell you, this is too much, this is too hard, this is too blah, blah, blah. But with Rustic Oracle, what I found brilliant, it's because in the eyes of Ivy, nobody can say it's too much, because she brings something that it cannot be too much for this 8 years old, beautiful young lady. And that's why I found it's more powerful or emotional, or there's something there, because most of the time with silence and let's say memories, it's hard because we treat about trauma and the traumatic experience. That's what I found. The traumatic experiences are always hard to make story out of it.
You did a brilliant job in Les Nôtres. Man, like, People, if you haven't seen this film, you have to see this film.
Oh, thank you so much.
But it is similar in the sense that it's like what you did is we have this beautiful character on screen, and she's well, she's a little older than Ivy, but we'll still call her a kid.
Yeah, 13 years old. So
yeah, and there's also a lot of beauty in her silence, like in her trauma. Like there's a few things that we don't need to witness to understand what she's feeling in that moment and how heavy that silence is, how, and at the same time, because she's a kid, we can't detach ourselves and say that, it's too much for us,
We still want to save the kids.
Of course.
So I think it goes with that. We wanted to save Ivy. We wanted to save the next generation. We don't want to fuck up them as much as the older one, which is really interesting. Really. But it's a hard subject, but I think people need this because the next generation will come and they will face so many things. So if they can remember, it might be a good thing.
That's actually about like people maybe not wanting to address a certain subject. That's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to make fiction instead of documentary, because the first few films that I did were documentary, and I was like really, like an activism documentary, like
yes. You will see the reality.
Yeah, I'm going to show you what really, what this means and what and all that. But after Le Dep, I realized that people, like after like the Q&As and stuff like that, people from around the world were asking me questions about social issues in regards to Indigenous people more than after screening documentaries about those social. And I realized it's because when you can connect someone emotionally, that's when you can kind of like reel them in and talk about the cognitive side of things and the social, injustice and things like that. And you can reel in more people that maybe weren't interested in that subject matter, weren't interested in the activism side of things at all. They just wanted that story. They were like interested in the story, and you get them with the characters and you get them by the heart, and then you can still have those important conversations about like the social issues. So
but on the other side,
yeah, exactly, it's like a sneaky way of bringing them,
I can say for the people who didn't see Le Dep, it's a little bit harder. I think it's more blue, it's more modern, and and I wanted to speak about that because there's this topic and the way we want to treat it, but there's something really warm and sweet in the choice of all the colors. You pass in Le Dep, it was all cold and blue and dark during the night. Rustic Oracle is daytime. Can
mostly,
I say that?
Yeah.
Mostly movie, warm color, warm music. Also, it's not modern music. It's more like I think it's a banjo, but I'm not sure of the exact instrument. But
it has another name, but I can't remember the name. But it looks like a banjo. Like it's a small,
okay. Looks like a banjo, but this instrument. And it's all warmer. Is it conscious, or is it something that you really wanted to do from the top, or you started to build up during the process of creating the film?
I think it built up. I know that especially for the colors, and I only realize it kind of like afterwards, is I'm very influenced by the main character that I've created, basically. So when I see the film after I've written it, and even when I hear the film, it's always linked to the main character. So for me in Le Dep, Lydia was very stoic. She was, talk about someone who didn't want to face memories, like she's...
So, no, I mean, there's something there.
I know. So she has like this barrier inside of her where she doesn't let people in too much. She also has a dark past, but that she's overcoming, and she wants to push forward, but it's still gloomy. Like there's something that's lingering that is preventing her from being completely open and okay with herself, you know. Ivy's the opposite. Ivy is so full of love and light, and I mean light as in light, but I mean lightness as well. Like it's there's lightness in her. So that instinctively came with warmer tones and something more lyric in the music, like a little bit more melodic and I always say airy. I kept saying that with my composer. I'm like, I want it to be airy, but I don't know how to explain it without saying that word, airy. Whereas Le Dep, I felt that it was like I had to feel it in the pit of my stomach, you know. And I worked with two different composers, but they both got exactly, they got it. Like I didn't even have to say much. That what they did come up with was how I felt in regards to the main character. Same with like, yeah, the colors. I worked with the same DOP for both films, and he also definitely got where I wanted to go. Yeah.
And you said airy for the music?
Yeah.
Just wanted to well understand the word, because there's something really interesting. We saw it in the trailer. She's got some, not vision or something. She's there. So she's not only with us. And there's two things that we've got the impression that Ivy got the memory in her, the music for the first, if I compare with Le Dep, in the music, there's something more traditional, or some notes more traditional. Am I right?
And repetitive as well. There's two things that are, yeah. There's traditional elements. There's also a voice that kind of carries Ivy in many instances. And there's also like a repetition of the same melodies that come back depending on where Ivy is in her journey. Like even the score is kind of like composed depending on where Ivy is bringing us, as opposed to just the overall narrative, like a lot of films do. Yeah.
Yes. And there's also this music that I really found so beautiful. And do you think because she wanted to speak Mohawk language, can I say that?
Yeah.
I know there's another word.
It's Ganya, but it's okay. You can say Mohawk.
You just once. I won't try, but how do you say it?
Ganya.
And Ivy would like to speak. I didn't say it.
You didn't try it.
But Ivy would like to speak this language, and in the music we can hear it. Do you get the impression that this voice is one of her voice too, because it was driven by this character too?
Oh, I didn't see it that way actually, because probably because I know the artist who's singing and she's not Ganyagahaga, like she's not Mohawk, so that's probably why I didn't necessarily equate it to her voice. I saw it more as like the voice of the women, basically the women in her life, you know, and then on another level, the women that the film is supposed to represent as well, you know, the voice of and the voice of motherhood. And so I was more in that sense than her own voice, but I like that. I might pretend that was the intention. I don't know.
You can say that next time.
Yeah, next time I'll be like, yes, it represents Ivy's voice.
And because maybe it's the title also, when you think about that, there's something really spiritual also in your film with Rustic oracle, this music. And there's one little ceremony that I didn't know what it is, but in Abitibi, that used to be a little ceremony. So we've got this little glimpse of your of the culture, but just a little one. And
well, that actually, those mini glimpses, because we also hear an elder speak the language, but they come in tiny moments, because especially in those years, our culture was in really bad shape. Like we hardly had any speakers left. There was no funding for programs to keep culture alive, to keep language alive. So I also wanted it to reflect that time period where we were just holding on to the small things, the small threads that linked us to her culture. And also because the entire film is basically Ivy's memories of that summer, she holds on to those memories, those moments of where she heard the language, where she felt the music, where she had the ceremony. Like, she still holds on to those little memories, because as she gets older, they are part of what she has become, you know.
And how was it to shoot? Because you shot most of the film in Mohawk community, right?
Yes. Yeah, like 90% of it. Yeah.
Because it's now it's not the 90s, but most of them remember, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
How was it to shoot in the community?
It was absolutely amazing. I've shot before in the community, but most of the things that I've shot were documentaries. So it's basically always asking people for favors and like, you know, people, yeah, can I do this? And can I interview for that? And can I borrow this, whatever? And people seeing me on the side of the road with a camera filming pine trees. You know, the community is used to me doing that kind of thing. And they've been super supportive of me since like day one. But for once I was able to come back to the community with a real production and hire people on the set, both behind the camera and in front of the camera as extras. And I think it was like, for them, it was like, holy, okay, this is a real thing.
Got a real job.
She's actually doing a real film this time. And it was amazing to have so many people want to be a part of it, and you know, just be hands-on and just want to tell the story with us. So it was like, I don't know how many times I cried on set, but so many times, especially the day that we did the community search party. Those are all members of the community and lots of like family and cousins and aunties and friends and a lot of people. And we had the family of one of the missing and murdered Indigenous women. You know, there's a woman from my community who's no longer with us, and her sister's very vocal, and she was part of this journey with me from like the first time she read the script, and she's like, I'm on this train with you, we're telling the story. And she was there, and her mom and her sisters were there, and every time I get to that scene, even though now like I don't like the way we shot the scene, you know, like when you look back, you're like, I should have done that differently. Every time I see them, my heart kind of goes and I remember why I wanted to tell the story. You know, it's for families like that family, and they're there on screen helping me tell a story. Anyways, every time I talk about it, I get super choked up, and it's like, but having them be a part of it and having the community be a part of it was definitely the biggest plus of shooting this film. And I still feel it when I watch the film. I still feel that like community presence and that community support, and that was pretty amazing. I wish I could shoot all my next films in Ganastanga. I don't know if that's realistic or not, but it was.
And they are amazing. We don't feel, because you work with many non-professional actor, I think.
Mostly, yeah.
And it doesn't appear at all.
I think it comes from the fact that it's something that is close to their hearts, right? Like it's something that they know is so real, that it wasn't hard for them to get into that zone and to feel for the characters, because they know that this is happening. And a lot of them know someone. They know someone who was murdered or has disappeared, and so I think it's with them in mind that they you
say it's the same for the teenagers actor?
I think so. Well, like even for Lake, who plays Ivy, her mom, like the first time that I met with them, her mom, Cookie, she told us about a woman who was murdered in her community in Ganawage, and how Lake is aware of the story, and she knows about missing and murdered Indigenous women, and she knows it happens close to her because it's happened in her community. So even her, at her young age she was 9 when we shot it, she knew what she was representing. And there are scenes where those tears were not fake. Like the scene where she, runs out of the motel and bursts in tears. We did it like several times, and she bawled each and every time. And then we cried, and then her mom cried, and then like everyone was crying. But it's because, and then I felt bad for making her cry, because I'm like, this is just a movie and I'm making a kid cry. This is awful.
She's so young, she cannot.
I know, exactly. What am I doing to this poor child?
For sure.
But she knew what it meant. Like she brought that with her, and even if she's only 9, which is amazing.
But I think it's the biggest strength of the young actors who really wanted to do that, because I've got the same feeling with when I direct young actors with hard scene. They understand it way better than us, and I think it's because they don't try to avoid, or they don't try to forget.
I think, and they don't they're not trying to act, they're just letting themselves feel,
Yes, and they don't get this many layers of traumas that at some point will block some emotion when it's too hard. And I think with almost the really professional actors, when they started to put their defense. And I think it's really normal, because we're all humans, and there's some subject too hard to get through it. But with the kids,
they don't have those layers.
They don't have those layers. So yes, I can believe that Ivy. And I'm pretty sure at the end she wasn't so traumatized to cry so many times. And
no, like when she was fine. Like when we finished the scene, and she like her mom and I are both crying, and then she wipes her tears, and then she skips over, and she's like, was that good? Are you guys happy? And I'm like oh my God, kid. That's what I love, because they don't get this trauma, and at the end they will come back and say, it was so funny, I cried, and oh my God. Whereas
with you.
Exactly. Whereas it's Carmen, who plays Susan, she's incredible. She's such a pro and such a loving person, and I love her to death. But of course, for her, triggering some of these emotions, like you were saying earlier, the layers are there are more layers there, and it was a little deeper. And there were times where we needed to take a step back and just and breathe and let ourselves live our own emotions as well, to be able to tell some of the harder scenes.
May I say, I think there's not that no male filmmaker can do this type of film, but when you talked about that and the way you put yourself and the way those characters are based on your mix and match of you and your own stories, at some point you can get through it also with the actors, if I can put it that way.
I think so. There's like an added sensitivity that I think it's just it's easier to grasp those moments and to build trust too. Like it's easier, I think, to build that mutual trust when it's so close to you as a filmmaker. Yeah.
And I don't remember which the other subject are. When we get the emotion, I'm just like all in.
All in for emotion.
All in for emotion.
Yeah.
I think it might be a little bit female filmmaker, but it's another topic totally. But I wanted to speak about another type, because we talk a lot about women, but let's talk a little bit about those policemen. I put in my notes, and I told you yesterday, they are nice, but blind and just a little bit useful. Most of them, they are not hard, they are not pushy, they are just blind. Yeah. And I was wondering, and I asked you yesterday and we didn't answer yet. I want the answer. Is it kind of based on your own personal memories of policemen on white, and we should say white policemen, unfortunately, but it is what it is, on both film, on Le Dep and Rustic Oracle. We've got the same type of policemen.
Yeah, one's kind of nicer than the other, but
Yes, but he's blind.
Yeah, even in Le Dep, he's kind of like, he's actually, you wonder if he actually is blind because he doesn't even see him in the backstory.
Yeah, he's still blind. I was just like, oh my God, sweet, but
yeah. In Le Dep, the character that's played by Jan Englen, we really wanted to show that because in a lot of Indigenous communities, the police officers that are non-Indigenous, it's like their first job out of school. Like it's harder to get hired in a city or whatever, and then so they go and work in communities, and then they are actually faced with so many things that they wouldn't see in the city, so they're ill prepared. But a lot of them are well intentioned, but they're so worried that they're gonna like make someone mad or upset. They're so worried of like the faux pas, you know, that they're there's like an extra layer of like being cautious and maybe like maybe not blind, but avoid putting themselves in a situation where they could, you know, get in trouble kind of thing.
And if you want to start your career, you don't want to have a bad report or
you don't want to screw it up, you know. So that's that character. This was very different in the sense that it's actually really based on what happens in a lot of communities when there is a missing persons report. And also, like, I didn't address it in the film, but I did explain it to the actors that there is a definite underlying tone of there's no trust in the police because the film is set in the middle of the 90s. It's a few years after the Oka crisis. And I didn't address that. I didn't want it to become a theme, but I did want it to be rooted in realism. And the reality is no one in the community trusted the cops anymore. Like no one did. So you stayed polite and you had no choice but to come to them because there is no policing. And today there's still no policing, and there's the relationship in Ganasdaga with the SQ is still very strenuous, to say the least. Like it's still hard. There's still a lack of confidence, of trust, of willing to cooperate. But I didn't want it to become a caricature either. Like I didn't want him to become this evil dude that didn't care, because that's not realistic either. Like I don't think they deliberately don't care. I just think they don't necessarily put the extra effort into anything. And it was actually loosely based on what I read, testimonies that I've read of other families that have gone through it as well. So, and like when we were talking about how it went in the community, to shoot in the community, we had a bit of a moment when Kevin showed up for the first time in the police car on the set with all the people.
Yes.
It did trigger a bit of I don't want to say aggressiveness, but like reluctance in some of the people who saw the cop car pull in, and the cop car itself was a 90s car, so it like automatically flashed us back to the Oka crisis. And there was a bit of it wasn't tension, but I could feel that I had accidentally, I didn't even think of it beforehand, like I accidentally kind of triggered a bit of PTSD, you know, for the community. Like, so luckily he was really, really nice with everyone. And he, you know, at some point between takes, he was playing lacrosse with a bunch of people in front of the school. And like a lot of people stopped and were like, is a police officer playing lacrosse like in front of the school? And I'm like, yeah, but he's just an actor. He's not a real cop, you know.
He's playing guitar. He's a musician too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, and he did that quite a bit. Like he's, you know, just playing around with people. So that, and that's something that, like, it's not necessarily a context that you would have to think about in any other community or in any, you know, it was very specific to that moment and to my community. And I didn't foresee that happening. But yeah, the relationship with and it's funny because I had just finished, when I finished writing Rustic Oracle, I had just finished a web series called Police sans réserve, which is 2 cops that are like that patrol in a community. And so when I finished Rustic, everyone was like, what's your obsession with cops in a community? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I have like this undealt trauma. I don't know. I keep writing
So it's
cop
not
characters.
based on your personal trauma, which was my first question.
But I don't think so. If it is, I really don't remember. Well, obviously I remember the summer of 1990, but nothing happened directly to me. So I don't know.
But which is really interesting because Kevin Parent always say one sentence that annoyed me, but as hell. It's stay calm. It's the worst thing to say when you are in danger, panicking, whatever. Stay calm. I wanted to just snap. I would just stop saying that. It's the worst. It's the worst. But
oh yeah, she wanted to smack him. Like when that scene happened. After that,
totally agree.
Carmen was like, I feel like Susan would smack him. And I'm like, no, don't, because then you're going down a different path. But you have to be above kind of that moment. But yeah, there's condescend. It's very condescending.
Yeah, it's terrible. And say that in just the perfect tone that you want to snap.
Okay. Yeah, he did a pretty good job. Yeah.
He was really, really good. But at some point you're just like, they are so lazy. And the one in the Abitibi too. So it's interesting to see. And I didn't think about that way. It was the way that your community interact or feel with the police.
But I think it's in a lot of Indigenous communities though. Like it's in, because if I look at like cases that happened in and around Val d'Or actually of missing and murdered Indigenous women, the parents say kind of the same thing. There was like a disregard or a lack of interest in moving the case forward because they're like, she ran away, she'll come back, and then 20, 30 years later, they're
never come back.
No, yeah, exactly. So
yes. And did you show the film to many people of community or people who live this trauma, and how do they react?
Yeah, the first place that we screened the film was Ganesadagi. For me, it was really important that the community that hosted the film and the community that helped me tell the film, they were the first eyes. They were to me, and honestly, I was willing to take the film and rework it if they weren't going to be happy with it. And so we screened it there. We had like a private community screening, and it was really powerful. It was really powerful because the response was overwhelmingly positive, but also full of emotion, and the actors were there and they got like super long standing ovation. And to me it was like, okay, so I have the community's blessing. I must have done something right with the story. I can now show it to other people. And the family of the woman originally from my community that passed away, they were there as well, and they were also very happy and proud of the film. And that's actually one of the responses that the film has traveled quite a bit, and it has traveled mostly in urban areas as of yet, but many urban areas where there's still a large Indigenous population, like Vancouver, and the response afterwards is people coming up or just at the Q&A raising their hand and telling their personal story and their link to this type of trauma. And that I wasn't necessarily prepared or equipped for from the get-go. Like I wasn't, I didn't foresee that being what was going to happen, of having to receive people's personal stories and find a way to have the right answer back, like the right response back. So that was definitely heavy, and I'm very sensitive, so it takes me 2 minutes and I cry. So a lot of screenings would end in just me and other people just basically crying, and it became very c'est devenu lourd. Like it became very heavy to have to live those moments. So now our plan is when we do go, because we are going to distribute the film in communities. The film is going to travel in remote communities because I want them to see the film, but also they should have access to films, you know.
Should we say that this storytelling, it's like giving back the memories to the people,
Exactly.
or giving them the right to open their own personal box of memories, which is wonderful.
Exactly.
When we talked about filmmakers' duty of memories, it's to give back.
Definitely to give back and to allow them to take ownership of that, and to find a way to deal with their own grief or personal stories. And when we do travel with the film, when we do end up doing that, we now know that we have to come equipped with social workers, or just people that are better equipped than me as a filmmaker to like.
But as a filmmaker, you open the box.
Yeah, exactly. I'm opening the box, and I will be there and listen to everything for sure. But I don't have the tools. I'm not trained to have the right answers afterwards. So we're going to make sure that we come equipped with the people that do have those answers, and that can help people push through and to help them heal, you know, like basically like not that I see the film as a, you know, healing tool. I don't, it's like, I don't want to sound pretentious at all, but if it can do that, then, oh my God, of course I want that to happen. I want to help people, you know.
At the beginning of the conversation, that's interesting. You said that you want to make film to get kind of a social impact. Isn't it the most beautiful social impact that you can have?
It's, yeah, and it's incredibly rewarding, even though the moment is hard. After, I feel like, wow, you know, and those moments made everything else that happened afterwards, or is still happening in the film, it's just the gravy. It's just like, oh, okay, cool, it's in theaters, cool. But to me, those moments, like after screenings and talking about someone's personal story, that to me is like, that's why we made the film, you know. It's for these people we made the film. It's just, you know. Yeah.
And I think it will be the best way maybe to end the conversation. It was so fast, went so fast.
Pretty crazy, eh?
It's crazy. But seriously, I think it's the best. I don't want to start another conversation because I found it so powerful, the way you gave back to the people their memories, and also just open this little box that they can get a grip in their own story. So
well, Jeanne, I just want to say that I'm hi. I'm so humbled and grateful, and I'm like kind of like giddy that I had this conversation with you, because I think your work is amazing. You're an incredible, kick-ass filmmaker, and I hope this is just one of many, many conversations that we will get to have. And thank you, Hans, for connecting us, and thank you for your wonderful topics and questions. They're pretty amazing. It was great.
But I think at the end of this crazy pandemic, we will go get this beer.
Yes. Good plan. I like that plan.
It's a good plan. Yes.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. The next time we will do this again, for each of your next films, we will connect. We'll connect again and do this. I think
it's such a good match. We were talking about that yesterday. It's the best match.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you both for both of your incredible films. I mean, just absolutely wonderful. Find Sonia's film, Rustic Oracle. Find Jeanne's film, Les Nôtres, or in English, Our Own. Watch them. They are really, really wonderful, wonderful films. Tune in tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for an in-depth conversation with filmmaker Tracy Deer, who tonight is being awarded the TIFF Emerging Artist Award. Congratulations, Tracy. She'll be in conversation with producer and former executive director of Imaginative, Jason Ryle, talking about her groundbreaking film, Beans. Find the links to those and all upcoming sessions at dgc.ca/visionaries2020. We'll also be sending out specific invitations on each day. It's going to be fantastic, just as tonight was. Sonia, Jean, again, what can I say? Thank you so much for your film, for this conversation. We will do it again, and with a glass of wine next time.
Sounds like a plan. Y'all go.
I love it. Thank you.
Pleasure. Good night. Be well.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
On quitte pour vrai, là? Ouais. Hey, salut!
Ça enregistre. Ryan?
Ouais, il enregistre encore. Faut qu'on quitte.
Oui. Hey, merci, vraiment.
Hey, merci à toi. Ça a passé
vraiment...
super vite. Évidemment.
Là, j'avais Hans qui me disait, bon, ben, c'est comme tu peux commencer à wrap it up. J'étais là, tu aurais pu nous laisser jaser encore, il n'y aurait pas eu de problème. Et vraiment, c'était un honneur. J'espère sincèrement qu'on va se revoir pour vrai.
C'est sûr. J'en fais un mandat, là, genre post-COVID, là, check-moi bien aller.
Excellent.
OK.
Merci beaucoup.
Bisous.
À bientôt. Bisous. Bye.